What is up, everybody? Jeremy Eisenfire here, and welcome to the channel. Season 3 of From certainly gave us a ton of definitive answers to chew on while we wait for Season 4, but they also left a ton of things still yet uncovered. And perhaps one of the biggest revelations and biggest questions we have heading into the new season is, of course, the revelation of Jade and Tabitha finding out that they are one of the original parents of the Anghkooey children, and, of course, the introduction of the mysterious Man in Yellow. And while we also learn the intriguing origins of the monsters themselves and how they were originally parents of the Anghkooey children as well, but chose to sacrifice their own blood in exchange for immortality, but it seems like the immortality they received wasn't what they expected. And how the original versions of Jade and Tabitha were not only also parents of one of the Anghkooey children, but seemed to try and stop the sacrifice from happening, albeit unsuccessfully. Which of course did give us some definitive answers that we have been waiting a very long time for, but it also sets up a ton of new questions as well. Like, what really happened to the Anghkooey children? Why exactly do they look the way they look? And was the Man in Yellow the original being who promised the parents immortality in the first place, only to trick them into sacrificing their own children for his own means, and therefore cursing the parents in the process, along with potentially their entire town, as there are way too many monsters for them to all be parents. And today, we're going to take a look at the Anghkooey children and the sacrifice that they potentially were put through, and how exactly it not only came to be, but also the potential part that the Man in Yellow played in it as well, and how it may also be tied to the very origin of the Boy in White himself. One thing we see at the end of Season 2, when Jade has his vision down in the caves, are these Anghkooey children being laid on these slabs, which appear to be sacrificial altars of some kind, as we see them all chanting the mysterious Anghkooey word, which we later find out in the Season 3 finale means remember. And thanks to some other added context we get in Season 3, we also learn that the children themselves were pouring their last remaining hope into the roots above them, which would go on to form the first Farway tree, which is most likely the same bottle Farway tree we've seen in the show. A tree that is reportedly going to have a lot of importance according to the Boy in White, as he shows up and stops Victor from chopping it down. But I'm starting to think the Boy in White might have some ulterior motives for not wanting the tree to get chopped down, which lead back to one of my original questions in terms of where exactly the Boy in White came from in the first place, and how the Anghkooey children may have created a little bit more than just the first Faraway tree when they poured all their hope into the roots, and how they could have potentially inadvertently created the Boy in White themselves. Could he potentially be some sort of spirit avatar of the Faraway tree itself? And could that explain why he is so closely tied to the trees, and why he's personally invested in them not getting destroyed? Will cutting down these trees successfully get rid of the Boy in White? Are the trees themselves what tether him to Fromville in the first place? And if so, just what role are these trees going to ultimately play? One thing we notice super early on is how the Boy in White seems to have a strange connection to these faraway trees, and how just about every time one of our characters uses one of these trees successfully, the Boy in White seems to be involved in one way or another, by either being close by when they are used, or by being the one who directs them to the tree in the first place. Which, if nothing else, could potentially explain why Dale had such a catastrophic result when he used the tree in Season 3. Maybe it was not sanctioned by the Boy in White. Which also makes me wonder if the faraway trees are indeed going to be the ultimate way out of Fromville, but how they won't be able to access the exit until they complete the quest that they were sent here to complete. As we've said in the past, we have a feeling that it's not going to simply be as easy as finding the way out of Fromville and them all piling out the door. It seems like it's going to be a little bit more complicated than that. Almost like they are here to complete some kind of objective before they can leave, or risk getting pulled back in like Tabitha did. And given some of the surrounding evidence that we've been shown up until this point, it seems like successfully saving these Anghkooey children where everybody else has failed prior might be the ultimate goal that they are here to complete. But before they do that, I get the feeling they're going to have to fully remember exactly everything that happened during that original timeline, and what really happened to these Anghkooey children, and the potential hand that the Man in Yellow might have played in orchestrating all of it. One thing we learn through Fatima as she is giving birth to the Smiley baby is how she seemingly accessed some of his memories and learned the origin of the monsters, and how they were the original parents of the Anghkooey children, and that something convinced them to sacrifice their own children in exchange for immortality. And I do get the feeling the something in question here that convinced the parents to do this was indeed the man in yellow himself. But I get the feeling he had a darker motive that he was keeping hidden, that he was really using this sacrifice to achieve his own ends, like becoming the all-powerful entity of Fromville that he appears to be. But exactly how did he convince these parents to sacrifice their children in the first place? And I get the feeling, to this end, he might have employed some of the mental manipulation tactics that we see are very prevalent in From already, and how this place can sometimes get good people to do evil things. One line that always had me very intrigued in Season 3 was how the children were apparently born in the dark and died in the dark, which I believe could potentially mean that they were born and spent the remainder of their lives in these caves. After all, one thing we did see, which was a pretty interesting detail down in these caves, were what appeared to be makeshift cells that were most likely used to keep the children locked up in. And if the children did spend the majority of their lives underground or in these caves, it could potentially explain why they look the way they look. Between the pale and malnourished skin that they have, the patches of hair that is missing, and the overall disheveled look of the children could potentially be a result of them adapting to their environment underground and never having seen the sun very much, which of course could have devastating effects on the development of a child. Which also begs the question, did the parents give birth to these children with the sole intention of sacrificing them in the first place? Was this always the plan for these children? And if so, what kind of dark sacrifice were these children put through in the first place, and was it done by the man in yellow? Which I get the feeling it most likely was, and I think we even see a painting down in Miranda's basement that could point to this effect. We see what appears to be some sort of figure with the children in his hands as some sort of yellow liquid comes out of his mouth. And I do potentially think that this could be a depiction of the man in yellow sacrificing the children himself. Now, of course, we do see that this figure has dark hair and not gray hair like the man in yellow, but if we also take a look at Miranda's original painting of the man in yellow, he also has dark hair as well, indicating that the man in yellow is slowly aging over the years, similar to how the boy in white has also been aging, which could potentially be an indication that something is fundamentally changing with Fromville in this cycle compared to previous cycles, which could potentially be a result of Jade and Tabitha getting further than any other iteration before them to actually saving the Anghkooey children. And part of me can't help but wonder if this entirety of Fromville is just one giant cosmic chess game between the boy in white and the man in yellow, with the boy in white potentially trying to break these cycles and successfully save the Anghkooey children where he has failed so many times in the past, whereas the man in yellow could potentially be fighting to keep these cycles going on repeat, with the cycles potentially being a source of his power. And could the boy in white and the man in yellow potentially be two different sides of the same coin? It has been theorized ever since the man in yellow first arrived, along with the addition of the time travel element added onto the show, that the boy in white and the man in yellow could potentially be the same person, just from two different points in time. Very similar to how we saw two different versions of Julie in the finale, a present version and the future version. And if so, could these two different sides of the boy in white be in opposition to one another? Could the man in yellow potentially have been corrupted along the way? And could that potentially explain why we are now starting to see the boy in white start to age? Will he eventually turn into the man in yellow? Or are they two different entities entirely, but simply in conflict with one another? But whatever the case ends up being, we could potentially be seeing battle lines begin to get drawn, with the boy in white on one side trying to save the children and break the cycles, and the man in yellow on the other trying to keep them going. And could all of this potentially have been started when the parents decided to sacrifice their children, whom went on to pour all of their remaining hope into the roots above them, creating the very first Farway tree, and potentially the boy in white as its avatar as well? And was it indeed the man in yellow who convinced the parents to sacrifice their children in the first place, all in an attempt to use this sacrifice for his own end? Whatever the case ends up being, it certainly seems like we have a very intriguing Season 4 to look forward to, if nothing else. And it will be very interesting to see just who exactly this man in yellow is, and what else he is capable of, and what is he going to put our townsfolk through next. And could they potentially learn something about this man in yellow, perhaps through Victor? Does Victor know about this man in yellow? Has he ever seen him in all of his time here? Or is the man in yellow only revealing himself now because of the information that Jade and Tabitha discovered? Either way, I am super excited for Season 4, and I cannot wait to see where some of these storylines go. And definitely leave your thoughts and predictions down below. Where do you see Season 4 heading, and what role do you think the man in yellow is going to play? And until next time, I want to give a big thank you to everybody out there for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like on your way out, and consider subscribing. And as always, keep those tinfoil hats on, folks, and I will see you on the next one.
That was a hell of a song. That Jade sure can play. This didn't have to happen, you know. Back up. The knowledge comes with a cost. I did try to warn you. Your wife shouldn't have dug that hole, Jim.
What if they don't come back?
What if that was our only chance to go home?
What if I wasted the only opportunity we're gonna get?
What if I'm lost? No one ever finds me.
What if it's not over? What if all this is happening for a reason?
Is this a bottle tree? Okay, look, it is, it's getting dark. This is crazy. I'm seriously, I don't understand what's going on here. This is crazy. Am I supposed to read this or something? What? What? Are you kidding me? Are we picked up? We are picked up. Fromily, here we go, Season 4. But it's getting dark, so if I'm gonna make it this season, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm going home. Season 4, I'll see you guys.